morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like so many of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you're catching us on a really big and kind of bittersweet day because we are wrapping up with our epic series in conjunction with the amazing folks at Project Learning Tree Canada. So Project Learning Tree is the single best organization in the world for teaching people about forests, their value, how we can work with them, how we can help protect them, save them, plant them, all those good things. It's been a wild ride all week long. If you want to learn about creepy crawly creatures in the forest or fighting forest fires, planting trees in a city, indigenous-led forestry, head to that channel, head to our YouTube channel, and you can learn all sorts of great stuff from some really amazing experts. But we are wrapping up in style today because we've been indoors for the rest of the series, and don't get me wrong, I love being indoors. I'm indoors right now. I love looking at cool slide decks, but there's nothing that beats getting out there into the sunshine to learn about plants and planting trees. And so Cheyene Brunet is joining us today to talk about her amazing role as an associate forester and forestry technician in helping plant 1.5 million trees through her amazing organization. So I'm really excited to learn about planting forests. I hope you are too, and I can't wait for all your questions. But without further ado, right near Cornwall, Ontario, come on in, Cheyenne, and take us away. Hey!
Good morning, everyone. So we're joining you here live from South Glengarry, just outside Cornwall, Ontario, Canada, which is located close to the Quebec-Ontario border. We're here in Grace Creek Conservation Area today, luckily on a beautiful day. It was supposed to rain, so we're pumped about that. Introduce myself a little bit. My name's Cheyene Brunet. I have spent most of my career working as a forestry technician up until recently, where I acquired my professional associate forester's designation, and I am the current acting stewardship coordinator for Raisin Region Conservation Authority. So a lot of you that might not be from around here might be asking, well, what is a conservation authority? There are 36 of them in the province under the umbrella of Conservation Ontario. And basically what they are local community-based natural resource management agencies that were established to protect and manage water, land, and natural habitats within a watershed. Then the next question might be, well, what is a watershed? So the analogy that I always like to use is a watershed is basically like a gigantic bowl. And what would happen if anywhere in Raisin Region Conservation, you were to drop a drop of water, at some point that water will all flow back to a centralized water course. In our case, to Raisin Region, to Raisin River, and then out to the St. Lawrence River. So that's basically how conservation authorities in the province work and how our boundaries are delineated. So like I mentioned, we're here just outside of Cornwall, Ontario in Grace Creek in a really cool project that was done a few years ago. It's a couple acres in size. There are thousands of trees and shrub in here, and it's an edible forest. So a really cool, different take on a type of project that can be done. And it's an afforestation project. So what that means is that there wasn't trees here before. Afforestation is when we're creating new forests. You might have also heard the term reforestation, which is replanting forests that have been cut or destroyed for any type of reason. So this was an afforestation project. And there are dozens of species of native trees and shrubs in here, and they're all edible. So it's edible fruits, edible nuts, and it's a pretty cool place to come in the summertime. This being in a conservation area means that it's publicly accessible to anyone. People can come here, enjoy it, pick the fruits, and they were basically based to bloom at different times of year. We've got serviceberry, nanny berries, pawpaws, all different types of nuts. So it's a really cool project and something different aside from the typical plantation style planting that we usually do. So conservation authorities are very cool. We do a lot of great work. One of them is tree planting. We work with a lot of partners, and most of the conservation authorities in the province are program delivery agents for the Forest Canada 50 Million Tree Program. And what that is it's a federally funded grant-based program that helps to offset some of the costs to landowners in the province. And they've been around for about 20 years. They have planted 47 million trees and are about to hit their goal of 50 million this year. So it's pretty fantastic, and it's a great program that we're really glad to be a part of.
Amazing.
So tree planting basically works the same way. So what we want to do first for all of our programs that we offer is we do a site visit. So we meet with landowners. They can either contact us through our various grant-based programs, or they can contact us directly. And what we do is we do a site visit. And during that time, we want to talk about what are their goals and objectives. We want to take a look at the site. And what I'm specifically looking at when we're doing that is we're looking at what's the vegetation type, what's the soil type, and what's the drainage. Those are the three big things that I want to know, because the vegetation matters because it determines what type of site preparations we might need to do, what type of tending and maintenance activities need to be done. And then the soil type and the drainage is the basis of most of life here on Earth. That's going to determine what species grow best, how fast they grow. And what we want to do is we want to match the appropriate species to the right site. So that's where my expertise comes in, is knowing what type of trees would do best on that site. Then we develop site plans for all of our landowners. So it's going to highlight, how far apart the trees are going to be, what type of trees we're going to plant, kind of all the logistics that have to go into a project before it's done. We develop maps, and then basically we take it from there. So through our programs, we plant tens of thousands of trees every spring, and we plant the trees in the spring because we plant bare root seedlings through a lot of our programs. And what that means is I'll do a little demonstration in a little bit. But basically the way that it works is that our nurseries, so in this case this year, we ordered trees from Ferguson Tree Nursery and Pine Needle Farms. They're some of the partners that we work with. And as soon as the frost comes out of the ground in the spring, the nursery lifts the trees using some really cool machinery and a lot of manpower. They bundle the trees, they sort them, they grade them, and then they package them for us. And before they get to us, they are stored in a fridge. So the important part is that the seedlings get lifted in the spring, and we basically keep them in a gigantic refrigerator around 1 to 4 degrees until we plant them. So if we want to go look, I'll show you guys exactly what that looks like. This is a really cool part that a lot of people don't necessarily get to see or know what to expect. So when the nursery ships us trees, they actually come in these gigantic bags. So they're all nicely packaged. This one, for our case, is from Ferguson. They come with a tag that's going to tell us what species is in the bag, how many, what seed zone they're from, and what size they are. And we get hundreds of these bags shipped to us every year. This tarp is really cool, an important part of tree planting. So when we're on site, this is called the Silvacool tarp. And because it's white and it has this cool metallic undercoating, is that it's actually photoreflective. So what that means is it's going to reflect the sunlight. It's going to keep the trees nice and cool underneath. Because like I mentioned, we don't want the trees to warm up. Because what can happen is if they get too warm, is that they can actually start to decompose in the bag, or they can actually flush out. And we don't want that. So we want to keep them as cool as possible. So this is just a little extra protection on the sites when we bring the trees out of the cold storage. So now what the trees look like that come in these gigantic bags is, I pulled out a bunch of different stuff for you guys, but the white pine specifically looks like this. So they come in bundles of 10. So in here, there's about 30 bundles that look exactly like this. They're nicely elastic band, and we keep them in water once they come out of the bag because we want to keep the roots nice and moist. So when we see the glistening roots, perfect, because we don't want the roots to dry out. And this is basically what one single seedling looks like. So these were graded. And what that means is once they were lifted from the field, someone went through and basically using a measuring tape determined if they were the right size or not. So sometimes in the field, you'll get a lot of variation in the size of the trees. So sometimes they're too small, sometimes they're too big. So we want to know kind of what size of trees we're working with. So these are white pine. I also pulled out some cedar for you guys. So again, this is a bundle of 10. We've got some hardwoods, we've got some red maple, some white oak, and one of my favorite species is these are tamarack. So fun fact, these are actually the only deciduous coniferous tree in the province. So what that means is they're the only tree that loses its needles. They turn a beautiful yellow color in the fall, and they also grow really fast, which is helpful on some of our different tree planting sites. The next thing I can show you guys, so these are black spruce, and you'll notice the root pods on these ones look different than these ones. So these are what we call a bare root seedling. They basically were seeded into the ground in the nursery, and they've been grown outside for anywhere from 2 to 3 years. These ones here are different because they were actually grown in a greenhouse, and they're called container stock. So you'll see the root pod looks significantly different. These are great for reforestation projects and sites that don't have a lot of heavy competition, and they're much easier and faster to plant, if you can imagine, because we don't have to deal with the big root masses. So depending on the type of project that we're doing and where we're planting, we kind of match what size of stock we want and what, if we want container stock or bare root seedlings, basically. Black spruce is great for swampy areas. So this is where these ones will be going. I'll put these back in here. But I think another little thing to mention is just the different root structures that we have on these trees. Is an oak, they have really deep tap roots. So these ones have actually been pruned. So what someone did at the nursery was they went in and they made them all about the same length, and they cut off their tap roots here. And that's mostly just to help facilitate planting, because they can get very long. And it's also a reason why oaks are a great drought tolerant species, because their taproot can extend very far down into the soil, which makes them more drought tolerant. Then you can compare species like pine that have a less fibrous root system versus a cedar that have these really fibrous root systems on them. So again, both of these have been root pruned to facilitate planting. But it's interesting to see what grows underneath the ground and kind of how different trees not only have different structures and site conditions, but their root systems differ too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to plant trees. So for ease, I will grab one of our white pine. So one of the first things that I always tell people is green side goes up, brown side goes down. For the hardwoods, not so appropriate because they're brown on the top and brown on the bottom. When we're planting them, the basic concept is that we want to have the tree as straight up and down as possible. We don't want it to be planted like this because the tree is going to grow in whatever direction we planted it in. The other thing that we want to do that's really important is we want the roots to fall as naturally in the hole as possible. When we're planting it, we don't want to ball them all up and shove them in the hole. We don't want them, we call it J-rooting. So basically it gets planted like this because the roots will grow in that direction. And if the roots are all bundled up under each other, if you can imagine, if this tree is going to live for 100, 200 years, it can actually suffocate itself. The roots start to grow into each other. And as they grow, it can actually cut off its own circulation. So we want the roots to be placed as naturally as possible. And then the other thing, and this goes for all seedlings, it's all the basic similar concept, is that we don't want to plant the trees too deep. We don't want to bury any of the green foliage. We don't want to bury this live stem here, but we also don't want them too shallow. So we don't want any of the roots sticking out. Ideally, we would get it right about here, because what happens if we bury the stem is that the tree actually breathes through its bark and through its needles. So if we're planting it too deep, then moisture stays around the tree and it can start and rot to decay that way. The other option is that we don't want the roots sticking out, because once the roots get dried out, then the roots can die basically. So we want the tree to look exactly like this, but under the ground. So I brought a couple things to show you guys today. So a lot of the planting that we do is large scale type afforestation projects. And one of our best tools is a shovel and a planting bag. So this is what our tree planting bags look like. Don't mind the dirt. It's a dirty time of year for everyone. This is what a tree planting bag looks like. So if you can imagine, this filled with trees. Oh, it goes like this, just around your waist. We take the elastic bands off all the trees. We dip them in water before, because like I mentioned, we don't want those roots to dry out while we're planting them. And we can fit 50, 100, 300 trees in here, depending on the size. And most tree planters, especially when they go up north doing reforestation projects, and even a lot of our contractors use these planting bags because it's going to help protect the roots. And then just the way they sit, they can get fairly heavy, so it takes a lot of weight off your hips. So this is another really important part of tree planting. The shovels that we use, you guys can use normal garden shovels that you would have, but these are kind of like a speed planting shovel. Some of them are made with wood, they're a little bit heavier. Some of the newer ones are like a nice carbon fiber, which means they're really light. But they have these smaller spades on them as opposed to a bigger shovel, and they're typically shorter as well, because we want to make as much movement as easy as possible when you're doing the same thing over and over again. So I'll do a little planting demonstration. So when we're planting our trees, there's different ways that different planters do it. And like I mentioned, those little container stock, much easier and faster to plant, require less of a hole than some of the bigger stock that we have. And a couple different ways that planters will do it. My favorite is what's called an L cut. So it's going to be backwards, but basically we're cutting a big L in the soil. And then what that does is then we pop it open. And what it does is create this really nice pocket underneath. And then what we do, I have to show you this way, is we take our tree seedling. Again, we don't want to ball it all up and shove it in the hole. Is we place it in the hole. We want the roots as naturally placed as possible. And then the idea is that this folds back over. We hold on to the tree very lightly, because we don't want to pull the needles out. We don't want to be too rough on the tree. And then we pack it in, basically. So let's see if I did it right. So what we're looking at is, again, we didn't bury too much of the main stem. There's no roots sticking out. It's relatively vertical. And then the other thing that we want to look at is when I'm doing planting quality assessments, I give the hole a quick little poke, because what can happen is get air pockets under the soil. And what that will do is they'll either fill with air or they're going to fill with water. Either way, it's going to drown the roots or it's going to dry the roots out. And then once they're planted, they should be able to withstand a little bit of a tug. And we basically plant all of our seedlings the same way. And I just use this one as an example, but it's all the same concept. And then once the trees are planted, most of our landowners have to do some type of tending or maintenance. So different things that can be done: spiral tree guards, there can be hemp mats put down, inter-row mowing. And again, depending on what the site conditions are, what the goals and objectives are going to change what they have to do after that. And then they're free to grow. So I think what I want to leave you guys with is just, whether you're planting 1 or 10,000 trees, that your effort makes a difference. So, yeah.
Cheyenne, that was so cool. Thank you so much for that. What a deep dive, and what a cool chance to plant a tree. We've only done this like 4 or 5 times in our 4,000 broadcast history, so it's always a thrill to get outdoors, and I hope our students enjoyed it as much as I did, because that was awesome. All right, we've got some great questions coming in already. I'm going to head to Mr. McEwen's class in just a minute, live in Alberta. They got a big group of a couple of classes together. YouTubers, please do share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you as well. But one of our first questions is about how we make sure a tree stays alive. So you've done all this effort, you've planted it. Is there anything that you need to do for watering it or fertilizer, some of these things that we might know from our own gardens, or do you just leave it be?
Yeah, so different things that you can do. So like I mentioned, we want to match the species to the site, because sometimes where you plant a certain species isn't going to be where it grows the best. So number one, matching the species to the site is going to maximize its growth and survival. Then depending on the number of trees that you plant, watering's never a bad idea, especially when we're in drought conditions. They can be fertilized also. I always like to say, if you're fertilizing your tree, you're going to fertilize whatever's around it. So we want to be mindful with that one. And yeah, but a lot of our projects, we encourage landowners to tend and maintain them. But other than that, they're typically just left. But especially smaller projects or any bigger trees you're planting, never hurts to water and never hurts to fertilize them. Mulching sometime is also a good idea because it helps keep moisture in around the base of the tree, keeps machinery and whippersnippers back from the trees as well. So that's mulch is never a bad idea either.
Yeah, I'm a homeowner now, so mulch is my life starting in about a week here in Newfoundland. So I can't wait to go buy my 53 giant bags and feel very strong. Thank you so much for that. All right, we're going to head to Mr. McEwen's class. If you guys want to come in, your mic is on, so you're feel free to ask away, and we'll see if we can hear you. Hey, guys.
There's a green dot.
Yeah.
Your name is Millie.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
My name is Millie, and my question is, what is in the soil that makes it so good to plant trees in?
Ooh. Did you catch that, Cheyenne?
Yeah, I missed the first part.
What is in the soil that makes it so good to plant trees in? Like, is there something special about the soil that makes it so easy for planting?
Yeah, so there's different ways that you can look at that. So different types of soil. So a lot of the common ones we keep at high level at like a loam, a clay, and a sand all provide different challenges when we're planting. Some of them have higher nutrient contents like clay, sand typically lower in nutrients, and also their water holding capacity too, which is something interesting. Sand typically drains better, clay holds more water. So again, matching those species to the site, and knowing that a clay soil typically has higher nutrient content, so you're going to deal with more vegetation and those types of things than you would on a sandy type site. Does that answer your question?
I think that's fantastic. Yeah. And again, you talked at the beginning of the presentation about really assessing the area before you start planting, seeing what trees fit the certain ecosystem. So it really depends where you are, but I love that as an answer. So thank you so much. Quick follow-up on this. Where can classes get the trees to plant? So we've had a question about that, where if a class wanted to order some for their own schoolyard, their backyard, is there a place to get one of those bags like you showed at the beginning, or is that just for you as your special?
Nope. So anyone if you're in Ontario specifically, but across Canada, there's lots of local tree nurseries. I would encourage you to reach out to one of your environmental authorities to do that. In Ontario specifically, there's a number of them. Like I mentioned, so any landowner can purchase tree seedlings like this.
How cool is that? I think I'm going to have to make that call the moment I'm done this broadcast. Okay. Cheyenne, one more quick one from online. How do you know where to plant a tree? So is there, like, when you're going around, you just pick that site right in front of you, maybe you'd scope that out in advance. Is there a rhyme or reason to where you plant each specific tree, or no? It's just a broad area?
Yeah, so a lot of times when we're planting trees, we've been contacted by municipalities, counties, landowners, and the area has been specifically identified by them for planting. For today's purpose, it was just a randomized location. Rocky, so it was going to make the planting a little bit easier. But in our case, we're always approached by landowners to do that. Or in some cases, if we have grants or different projects that we're looking to do, we will reach out to different landowners to find spots to plant potentially.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for the nuanced answer. Mr. McEwen's class, we'll head back to you guys live. If you have another one for us, come on up and take us away. Hey, guys.
Hi, my name's Scotland, and my question is, how do you change the sandy baseball soil into the good soil that you can plant plants in?
Yeah.
Ooh, good question. So very difficult. You can't really change it. And what I typically advise against doing is trying to change it too much. So there are things that can be done with different soil additives and that type of thing. But again, just matching your species to your site is the best thing to do. If you have to try to change it, try not to change it too much, and try not to use too many different types of foreign soil. Sometimes that can do more bad than good.
Yep. Great question, guys. I love that. Thanks, Scotland. All right. Cheyenne, this is either going to be really easy or it's going to be really hard. Do you have a favorite tree? No pressure.
Ooh, everyone asks me this question all the time. I would probably have to say bur oaks, I think.
Okay.
I love the corky ridges. I love that they're an acorn producer, and a long-lived species that can live for a long time. So I think that's one of my favorite is a bur oak.
Okay. Fair point. We've actually had real success with that question this week. Usually when you ask people involved in nature in any way what their favorite or something is, people are just like, no, everything's my favorite. It's the best. But pine cones are good. We had the biggest pine cone I've ever personally seen in a broadcast earlier this week. So again, head to our YouTube channel if you want to see a super pine cone, everybody, but they rock. Quick query about the challenges in this job when you're outside all the time. Maybe you fall in the hole that you're digging for the tree. Can you share anything that could possibly happen when you're out in the field?
Yeah, health and safety is definitely a big one. We deal with the extreme cold. We deal with the extreme heat. We're subject to the weather. We do work outside all times of the year in various types of weather. So weather can definitely be a challenge, just physically speaking, sometimes mentally as well. And then I think just when we're dealing with forestry, trees, and nature in general, is you have to be prepared for the unexpected. Mother Nature decides what she wants to do sometimes. Gives us too much rain, not enough rain, wind, storms. So there's a lot of unpredictability in our job, mostly relating to the weather. And then always hazards on the job as well. Like you said, sometimes we're dealing with heavy equipment, dealing with those types of things as well.
Yeah, what a great answer. And I know we've got a lot of Canadians live with us today, but for Americans that might be watching it later, because it's really hard for you to comprehend this if you're in somewhere like Florida. Like Ontario or Cheyenne is can be minus 40 Fahrenheit to like 100 Fahrenheit. So
Yep.
that's the range in Ontario. It's unbelievable how big we have it. And all Canadians also have to walk uphill both ways in the snow every day, all year long, just so you know. We all live in igloos. No. Mr. McEwen's class, we're going to come back to you for another one. Then we'll take a couple more from YouTube before we wrap up. Time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts. But Alberta, come on in and take us away. Hey.
Hello, my name is Olivia, and what tree is the hardest to plant?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a good question. So I've planted anything from a little seedling, like you guys saw today, to a 15-foot tall tree. All have their challenges, because it depends on the site that we're planting. Probably the most difficult to plant, I would say, might be like a black walnut, just because they have a really long taproot. Sometimes it can be really challenging, especially with these little shovels that we typically tend to use, to get the hole deep enough to be able to plant it properly. I always say if you have the right equipment, it should make it a lot easier. But I think black walnuts might be up there on my least favorite to plant, maybe.
Okay. I love when we get people talking about the fact that if you have the right equipment or the right clothing, like anything is possible, like whether it's Arctic adventures or planting trees or being outside can be a challenge unless you know what you're doing and going with a plan. So I'm glad we got that message in. We have a great question about how long. So you go out, you plant 10,000 trees in an area. How long till that becomes a forest where someone would walk up and be like, oh, this is a forest, not a bunch of baby trees that have just been put there. Is there a timeline for that?
Yeah. So through our projects, we monitor the sites for a 5-year period. And depending on the species that we plant, like the tamaracks that I showed you, a soft maple, it can be 5 years. They can be 15 feet tall. So they're basically on their way to being a forest. But I would probably say at about the 20-year mark, it'll start looking more like a forest. But in 5 years, you can have a very nice sea of trees, depending on the species that you plant.
Yeah, I've seen forest at every stage of the process. And I think if you go around, if you go to nature areas, go to local parks, city parks, provincial parks, what have you, you'll see examples of this. But it's really, really special to see a baby forest grow and to think that, in 100 years, that's just part of the landscape. It's part of the ecosystem in such a special way. So great question, guys. Cheyenne, time flies and you're having fun. This has been great. It's been so nice to hang outdoors with you. I feel warmer just watching you, which is nice from here in Newfoundland. Is there any final message you want to leave our classes with before we say a big thank you and farewell today about your role, about forests, about planting trees, anything before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a job in the environmental field, forestry is a great one. Especially if you're in the province of Ontario, conservation authorities are a great place to work. I've been working at them for the last 12 years. We hire a lot of co-op students and summer students. So just explore opportunities of what there might be, because when I was growing up, I didn't know forestry could be a career. and I've absolutely loved it. So find something that you enjoy. And then I think just back to the thing of whether you plant one small tree or you can plant 10,000, you're making an impact. And it's really rewarding to see trees that you planted grow and thrive. So I think that'd be my final message.
That's a beautiful message. I've been in and around outdoors my whole life. I'm a biologist by background, and I've got to tell you, one of the best ways to feel connected to the natural world is to plant a tree. Like, it's this legacy you're leaving. You're building an ecosystem. It's very tangible. You literally get your hands dirty, and it's such a big thing to do. So I can't encourage our classes enough. If you get the chance in Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta, wherever you're joining from today, go out and find that opportunity. It's a very special thing to do. Cheyenne, thank you so much for being the capstone to our epic Project Learning Tree series. I've brought up some resources where people can learn even more. There's so much to explore there. This has been an absolutely wild ride. We're going to have a great playlist for everyone on YouTube in just like 5 minutes when we're done this broadcast. You can take a look at all 5 programs. But for now, what we're going to do is we always do to wrap up is bring in all our classes to say thank you and farewell. Mr. McEwen, I'm coming to you in a second live. And if you're on YouTube and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have our permission. So please do feel free to do that. But Mr. McEwen, thank you so much for joining today and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.